What is your name?
Alexandra.
And Alexandra, do you consent to have your likeness be used for the purpose of this entrepreneurial program that we're doing with I.E. Brown Business School?
I do.
Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate your consideration here. Alexandra, what do you think are the biggest pain points of parents and employees that are working today? Just generally speaking.
Biggest pain points of parents and employees?
Yeah, parents who are employees of your organization, what are the issues that they face?
Childcare.
Okay.
Childcare, transportation issues, juggling work and family stuff to make sure that they can get to their employment on time.
So tell me about that a little bit more. So when you say juggling work and family stuff to get to employment on time, what does that mean? And what has that meant for your organization?
So a parent may call and say that they are running late or they can't be somewhere at a specific time where we need them to be because they have issues with getting their child to and from school, or maybe a child is sick, or maybe if it's a dual parenting situation, if another parent, drops the ball, for example, and the other parent has to pick it up. So there's some issues with that. If they can't coordinate their family life before they get to work, it makes the work secondary because they have to tend to their kids.
Interesting. So how much, do you feel like that results in a loss of productivity then?
Absolutely. Not only for the organization, the company, but, it's distraction to the employee as well, of course. So when they get to work, if they're late and flustered, they may not start, on time, or it may take them a while to get back and integrated into whatever they need to focus on for the day. So absolutely loss of productivity for both parties, for the employee and for the organization.
Do you think that employees would be better engaged with their work if certain daily issues were in some way taken care of?
Sure, absolutely.
Like the ones you described?
Yes.
Okay. Is that something that you guys as an employer would feel compelled to engage, even if it was like an outside organization who could somehow help, with these childcare issues or these transportation things you're talking about? Is that something that you guys would consider looking at from an employer perspective, maybe on a benefit?
That's an interesting question. So, yes and no. I might be willing, because I'm a small business, I don't know that I would give that as a benefit per se, but I might give it as a resource. So I might have a list of resources. Like, for example, I've worked in organizations where they have a dry cleaner who comes to the organization to pick up the dry cleaning and then take it, or another organization who brings food in for the employees so that they don't have to go seek food elsewhere. So as a resource, though, the company, that was not something the company paid for. It was something they provided to the employees, which made it so much more convenient for us. And at the time, I was an employee of these organizations. So absolutely, I could attract, I think, better and higher level candidates if I had a package like that where I could provide these types of resources to an employee to take those issues off their plate. But as a benefit, a paying benefit, I don't think that I would pay to do to provide a benefit like that.
Okay, so is it, because I guess the question I have is, and I know we've talked to some benefits people in the past, that on the benefits side there is some kind of a liability issue.
Absolutely.
Okay,
that's exactly what I was thinking about.
I know you have a background in legal as
right.
well. So,
absolutely.
So what, and I'll be quite straight with you. One of the things that we're looking to do is kind of like an Uber for kids type of model.
Okay.
Where it would be a service that could potentially be available to parents, who are working, or even those who are not, just have too much to juggle on their plate. What do you see are the possible downsides to that from a legal perspective as an employer?
Oh, if I offered that as a benefit, I'd take on the liability. So I wouldn't assume that responsibility from that angle. But it's interesting, one of the things you just said about Uber for Kids being a benefit for the parents who are juggling. As a parent, I take my kids 30 minutes out of my way to get to school. It would be so much easier for me to throw a kid or two in my car and make a couple extra dollars taking my own kids to school. So from an entrepreneurial standpoint, it's interesting the way you said that, because I thought, well, goodness, I commute quite a bit on a daily basis. If I could pay for my own commute, I would absolutely do that.
So
And
tell me about that. What do you
sure.
mean by that?
Well, so every day I take my kids to a school. They go to a private school. It's about 30 minutes away. And I have room. I have a big 8-seater car. I only take 3 of my kids there. I could fit 3 more kids, plus in there and all of their bags. But as a parent of 5, as someone who does have the legal background, someone who I think is, a good community member, if a parent called me and said, hey, I need help, it's hard to do favors for people, but if they're like, hey, I need help and I'll pay you $20, to take my kid to school too, it's right down the block from your kids. Great. You just paid for my gas. So I think from an entrepreneurial standpoint, there are probably a lot of parents who already have that they're doing, and they can absolutely take another kid or 2 in their car.
Interesting. Okay. Getting back to, because I know, like I said, as an entrepreneur, I know you have
Sure.
people that you manage all the time. So do you think that, but thank you for that feedback. That was really cool.
Sure.
Do you think that any working hours are lost to your organization due to these family issues or concerns with the employees? And if so, is it still in a manageable range?
Absolutely, there is time that's lost, because I think even if someone's distracted by an issue before they get to work, that doesn't just magically disappear once they walk through the door. They still have to come down from whatever distraction occurred. So having those kinds of things, and especially as a parent with 5 kids, if something happens with my kids, I know from personal experience that it does take a while to get back to work mode, for lack of a better term. So taking those issues off the table, and having someone that they trust who could pitch in, for example, like this Uber for Kids that you're thinking of, having someone who's absolutely trustworthy, dependable, all of those things, all the characteristics that you'd look for in someone to drive your children anywhere. If that existed, I think that would take a huge weight off of these parents' shoulders.
So tell me more about that. So
Sure.
what does trustworthy and dependable look like to you?
I can relate this to a company that I owned, where I hired tutors, for example, and so some of the things that are associating with this Uber for Kids, dependable. Some of my tutors weren't always dependable. They didn't always show up to their families' homes on time. This is a one-on-one tutoring situation. So I had to dismiss them and find another tutor. They might have been great in 90% of the content area, but even the 10% of the administrative area, if they were weak in, that made it a huge issue for these parents. So in dealing with parents with kids, dependable means doing what you say you're going to do, right? So if you say you're going to be somewhere at 8 a.m., be there at 7:59, so that's dependable. Trustworthy is that legal element, right? So trustworthy means there's no felonies. Your motor vehicle record is great. Most of us have had tickets probably for whatever, but, making sure that that's fairly clean. Making sure the car's insured, the parent is insured, or whomever is doing the driving. The way I see your service working in the best way is if I knew of someone. So if there was a way to connect me to a driver that I, maybe connected to, almost like a LinkedIn, right? Where you look at your LinkedIn and you're connected to 10,000 people, but you really only have 500 connections, right? I don't know how that works, but something like that, where it could be a second or third level connection. But I know, and it makes me feel better already, that I could send someone in my network some kind of an email or an introduction or something like that. So I would feel better if I was in some way connected to whoever would be taking care of driving my kids. And because I have kids of many different ages, my oldest is 14, my youngest are 2. There are different considerations for 2-year-olds than there are for 14-year-olds. So I almost don't have as much trepidation sending my 14-year-old with someone who may have a tangential connection with. But I absolutely need to know whomever is taking my 2-year-olds anywhere. So I think there is also a different consideration for the level of familiarity with the person who would be doing the driving.
Okay. So is it somebody that you would feel like you'd have to meet in advance?
For sure, absolutely. And you know what? Probably across the board. I mean, regardless if it's my 14 or 2-year-old, I would want to meet this person. But there's so many things that are done virtually now that even a Skype or something like that. But and I'm trying to think of a situation where I didn't meet someone that, well, but in all fairness, if I call a plumber, for example, I don't meet them before they come in my home. So if there's a way even to get some kind of, I don't know, like pass your Uber for Kids University, they have to do all these different things and they get a certificate. I don't know, but I'm a big person on training. So if there are so many organizations where, you know, they tout themselves on Angie's List and things like that, care.com, of having X, Y, and Z things, maybe that's something, if you develop some training around this Uber for Kids, if they complete all these steps and they're like the master level, whatever, then that would make me feel better too, because I'm, you know, an academic as well as an entrepreneur as well as a legal person. So there's so many opportunities, I think, though, and so such a need for the service you're contemplating, that I think there's great ways to get it done.
Cool. And so the other thing I meant to ask you too, because I know you mentioned having the academic, the entrepreneur, sure, and the teaching background as well. I mean, I know that you've been an administrator at a college campus as well. It's different, obviously, than corporate America. There's different schedules, but by the same token, I've got to believe the issues are pretty similar. Or are they not? I don't want to put words in your mouth.
No, there are. Okay. If you have to show up anywhere at a specific time, you're always going to have an issue as a parent. If you're required to be anywhere, even if it's to get a massage, for Pete's sake, you know, I know if you make a massage appointment for 9 a.m. and you can't get there at 9 a.m., someone else's schedule is messed up because of what happened with you. So that just creates this immense amount of stress. So we all have appointments, whether you're even employed or non-employed. Everybody has appointments. So when you have kids, it doesn't always fall into place with childcare type issues.
Okay. All right. Anything else that we should be thinking about as it relates to this?
No, I think the most compelling thing for me with my background and as a parent is having that connection. If I know in my network that someone else can drive and they're connected to so-and-so, and that person can almost vouch for them, like give them a thumbs up, you know, in whatever capacity it is, I think there's a great social platform that can build up around this. I frankly have used Uber once. It's not something that I personally gravitate towards, but everybody I know uses Uber more so than taxis and things like that. So it's absolutely something that has helped alleviate the burden of commuting for a lot of people. So it seems like a great idea. But I think if you work on, you know, how to make people more comfortable with the service, especially when you're dealing with kids, I think you can solve a lot of people's problems, and I think it's great.
Any reason why you've only used Uber the one time?
You know what? No. I mean, I just depend more on family than I do on Uber, you know, and if I can ask a nephew to come pick me up and give him $20, I'm contributing to his cause, I guess. So, and because of that familiarity, because I know my nephew. So it's not like I don't compensate people for picking me up, but I personally like that familiarity, that connection, that knowledge of who's going to be getting me.
Okay, fair enough.
So.
All right, thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Okay.